Trojans Live is sponsored by Pechanga Resort Casino, proud partner of USC football. Hey, Trojan fans, get ready for game day with the Ralph's app. Enjoy free delivery with a delivery savings pass and save on your fresh tailgating faves. Ralph's is a proud partner of USC Athletics. Fight on. Restrictions apply. Jordan Moore, Shaun Cody, Max Browne, and the great John Jackson. JJ joins us now for our weekly football roundtable. And let me start with the offensive guys. I'm seeing a lot of criticism of Keaton. I got to tell you, having watched that game, if I were to list the top 10 things that went wrong, he wouldn't make my list. What did you guys think of Keaton since he came in sort of as the big story into the game?
I'm right with you. I thought if you're blaming Keaton, my opinion is that's a lazy argument. The two of the interceptions coming late; those to me aren't as big of a thing. And
game was over for about an hour when he threw them.
Exactly, and I see NFL throws out there, the back shoulder throws, and yes, they're great catches, but a lot of those quarterbacks aren't even putting the ball there. The curl right at the end of Taj Washington, I thought was great. Is he perfect? No, but I'm not turning on the film and saying, "Oh wow, guys are going wide open," especially when you look around the conference and there's some quarterback issues. When 9's behind center, that's not the problem. There's other problems I got to address first.
I wouldn't want to play quarterback. I'll tell you that. He's getting hit too. By the way, I mean, he'll throw the ball, get rid of it, and get hit. And having Shaun Cody's hit you after you throw the ball is not a very good career goal.
I thought. I mean, other than I think a little.
I mean, it affects you stepping into the throw. You don't want to step into the throw when you know you're going to get it.
And like Coach said, Oregon State knew at one point in the game that they were just going to pass the ball. The run game was done, and that's when defensive linemen can just tee it up, and that's when he was taking some shots. But I think there was a lull in that third quarter a little bit with Keaton. I thought he came out on fire, came out sharp. He had some drops I thought that kind of threw his rhythm off. But third quarter, I didn't see that spark play that USC kind of needed.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't there. But I thought like you said, it wasn't him. It wasn't just Keaton. He wasn't one of the reasons that they were getting blown up that game.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest reason was they couldn't stop the run, and you cannot win football games if you can't stop the run. That is always the first thing. And Shaun, this is a conversation that we've been having for a little while now, and I think it's finally time that it sort of needs to be talked about. I'm not sure it can be addressed though, and that is just simply the size of this defensive line up front. And I was just sort of doing a little light research, looking at weights. Okay, so the guys that were supposed to be in the center of this defense were Brandon Peely or Ishmael Sofsher, who we have I'm not pronouncing his name correctly because we haven't even seen him play yet. He was the Alabama transfer who was brought in, right? Those guys weigh 325 and 330. The other guy who was talked about a lot was Jay Toya. He was going to start right on the nose and then ends up transferring to UCLA. He's at 325. The guys they have there now are at 275.
Yeah.
I mean, you know this better than us for sure, but, I mean, is there a physical issue in this run defense?
I think so, Jordan. And it's not for lack of want to, not for will.
Right.
I think Stanley Tafoe, he throws it in there. You got guys, that'll throw it in there. But at a certain point, it's just a force, mass, weight thing. It's just not enough. You just don't have enough. I don't care how hard you use your technique or you get your hands on someone and you square your hips up and you work all your technique. At some point, it's just a weight thing. And that double team, you just can't sit in there forever. I also think there are some linebacker issues, too, with not coming up. I get it last game, you're kind of waiting for play action, but I saw a lot of hesitancy at linebacker, not willing to come downhill and take that, when I mean take a guard or a tackle off of a tackle. So they're just not double teaming guys all the way back to the linebacker, but if that linebacker's coming downhill, if Kanai's coming downhill, he peels that offensive lineman, then the defensive lineman makes the play. So I just
not a huge linebacking core either. I didn't look up those weights, but I can tell you what, Ray Maluga is a whole lot bigger than some of these guys. I mean, at a certain point, as Shaun said, you're almost talking about physics. I mean, there's weight classes in boxing and MMA for a reason.
And what I notice is I think the USC defense staff knows they're undersized, and schematically they're shifting their front to help those inside guys out. And then as a result, the Nick Figueroas, the Jacob Lichtensteins, those guys are getting double teamed. And Oregon State, man, they went off tackle right, off tackle left, and beat the edges of this USC defensive line, which is counter to what we thought. We thought it was going to be the interior of the defensive line was going to be weak. Well, maybe they're overcompensating, and you saw guys like Drake Jackson get beat in the run game by the tackles and the tight ends for Oregon State.
I mean, for me, it's going to be interesting this week again to see how this team comes out, to start off this game because. We expect them to react to Dante. I mean, he's a great motivator, of course, and, he's very dynamic and everything. I'll be curious to see how they start the game this week in Colorado. Do they come out on fire and play with a sense of urgency? Not that they're not playing with urgency, but do they respond to the adversity that is in front of them? Because right now,
and they didn't play with urgency. Their head coach sat here and just said they were flat in the third quarter. So I mean, I think he's admitting to that, and so I send it back to you, JJ. To me, I think. And I think you and I have been talking about this for a long time, back to the Sark and the Kiffin eras. There's a difference between bravado and actual self-belief. And I think sometimes it's hard to tell. That guy that jumps up and is pounding his chest, sometimes it's real, sometimes it's false bravado. And I think when you find out is in that third quarter when they're just running it right down your throat. And we've seen twice this season that, there isn't necessarily a lot of self-belief. Some of these guys haven't won a ton either. Just because you put on the USC uniform doesn't, immediately make you a legend.
No, and I think that goes even back to high school, Pop Warner, and all those type of things. What is your culture? Are you used to responding in negative situations? Are you used to, there's a lot of guys. I mean, there's a lot of guys that have come from really good programs. There's a lot of guys that have come from bad programs. I mean, not to diss the high school football, but I mean that's the truth.
It's not all the same.
Not all of them have come from winning programs, and when you don't, you get it. Everything is contagious. Winning's contagious, losing's contagious.
And I think each team kind of develops their own kind of mental toughness. I think about last year's team and their ability to fight and come back at the end of games, and no matter what, when their back was against it, those guys were going to fight. Now, was it always the prettiest thing? No, it wasn't. But they had their identity was mental toughness. We are in it, and that's why I asked Dante about that. I said, Coach, how do you develop that mental toughness? Because it looks at points in this game like this team, it can go either way. And so far in those tough battles, they've kind of leaned toward the way of weak mental toughness, and that's why I was kind of wondering how he would kind of create that. Because you got to have mental toughness in this game. Because this thing is going to swing back and forth. People are going to make plays. You got to be able to take some punches if you can keep rolling.
He's going to find out a lot about the character of his players in this game, I think. I think when you go, like you said, you go on the road and there's a togetherness that you have to play with. Will they play with that togetherness? And that is part of the character that needs to be built.
Yeah.
And when things happen adverse, and something will happen, something bad will happen on Saturday at some point.
I think we thought we found that out in Washington State, and that's why it was so surprising to see them come back against Oregon State and have it look a whole lot like the Stanford game. That's where we're sort of going, which team is this? And then maybe we'll find out more on Saturday when the Trojans take on Colorado. We'll talk a little Colorado next for our final segment of Trojans Live. One final segment of Trojans Live with Jordan Moore, Shaun Cody, Max Browne, and John Jackson, getting you set for USC and Colorado coming up this Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, kick noon in the Mountain Time Zone. We will go on at 9 a.m. with the Trojan Tailgate Show here in Los Angeles, and 10 a.m. if you're in Colorado in the Mountain Time Zone, coming out to that one. Max, you sort of alluded to this earlier. Maybe best case scenario opponent for USC right now, worst offense in the league by far.
Without a doubt, it's rough over there. I have sympathy for Darren Cheverini, their offensive coordinator. That they just can't find an answer at quarterback. And Brandon Lewis does some good things with his legs. He is mobile, and maybe that's a point for SC fans. Colorado's in a little bit of an identity crisis with their offense in terms of they're trying to be more pass-friendly and be more free-flowing, but I think they need to get back to pro style. They have two good backs in Alex Fontenot and Jarek Broussard, and have some good tight ends as well that can do some things, but this offense is not great. I know I said that week one about Stanford, but the sample size is much larger with this one. Like you said, this is great timing for a bounce-back game for SC.
They will be testing the run game, though, JJ. Jarek Broussard is, Offensive Player of the Year last year in the Pac-12, so they do have talent in the run game.
And I'll tell you what else could keep this interesting is a high altitude, because when the Trojans get up there, it's going to be hard to breathe. They're going to be gasping for breath.
Their defense is solid, though. So if you mess around, their defense can.
Which Texas A&M found out. I mean,
exactly.
Colorado never really scored in that game, which is why they didn't win. But Colorado hung right there because Texas A&M didn't score. So
yeah, that linebacker Nate Lamb, he runs around, makes plays. He got that old school neck roll.
Yeah.
I think if I'm Colorado, I'm circling this game because SC looks like a wounded animal right now. And if I'm Colorado, I'm coming at him, man. I'm bringing everything. If I'm Carl Durrell, I'm preaching to these guys. Look what this team did did to them. Look what this team did to them. They're ripe for the picking. So this is definitely a game that I think Colorado's going to come out swinging, and because I don't think there's that fear element to SC right now, and for rightly so. So I think it's a game where you got to come out. I love that it's early, and I love that it's on the road. You kind of coalesce as a team, but SC's got to come out.
Speak for yourself on that early part.
Now, early is good for me, but I agree with you, Shaun. I could tell people coming up the tunnel, both the Stanford and the Oregon State game, those teams, they smell blood in the water. They were not quiet about it. Both those opponents were.
And there is there's not a more intimidating tunnel than on the road at Colorado when you have a buffalo sitting 5 yards outside of your locker room, snarling in the U-Haul cage. So we don't need any of that.
I do love Ralphie.
Yeah,
Ralphie's back in the running this year, I think so.
She's on a dead sprint right at you, and you're waiting to take the field in the second half. Though that's you talk about a set your mindset type of mentality right there. That'll get you right.
Trojans Live is a production of USC Sports Properties and Playfly Sports. Our producer is Rick Cutler. Production assistance by Katie Ryan and Art Webb. Our executive producer is Drew DeHart. Thanks so much for listening along here on Twitter, as well as you can catch the archive clips on YouTube, USC Athletics, and right here, 790 KBC and the USC Trojans Media Network, your radio home for USC football. For Shaun Cody, Max Browne, John Jackson, I am Jordan Moore. Fight on, everybody.